Law 4. Always say less than seems necessary. Statement of the law. When trying to impress with your speeches, remember, the more you say, the more ordinary and lacking in real power you will appear. Even when uttering platitudes, you will appear original if your speeches are vague, incomplete, and enigmatic like a sphinx. Powerful people impress and inspire fear by what they leave unsaid. The more you say, the more likely you are to say something stupid. Breaking the law. Gnaeus Marcius, known as Coriolanus, was a heroic general of ancient Rome. In the first half of the 5th century BC, he won many important battles, repeatedly saving the city from disaster. Because he spent most of his time on the battlefield, few Romans knew him, giving him an aura of legend. In 454 BC, Coriolanus decided it was time to leverage his reputation into politics. He ran for the high-ranking consulship. Traditionally, candidates gave a speech at the very beginning of the campaign. When Coriolanus appeared before the people, he began by displaying the dozens of wounds and scars he had received during 17 years of defending Rome. Few in the audience listened to the lengthy speech that followed. The scars, proof of his valor and patriotism, brought tears to many. It seemed Coriolanus' success was a foregone conclusion. When voting day arrived, Coriolanus appeared in the forum, accompanied by the entire Senate and Roman patricians. The common people were unpleasantly surprised by this defiant display of confidence and victory on election day. When Coriolanus spoke again, he addressed himself primarily to the aristocrats who had come with him. His speech was arrogant, even insulting to the people. Declaring victory in the election as a foregone conclusion, he boasted of his military exploits, made jokes that would only be funny to patricians, spoke ill of his opponents, and exaggerated the good he had done for Rome. This time, the people listened. It had never occurred to them before that the legendary soldier was also a common braggart. News of Coriolanus' second speech quickly spread throughout the city, and large crowds turned out to vote against him. Defeated, Coriolanus returned to the battlefield, disgruntled, eager for revenge on the commoners who had voted against him. A few weeks later, a large shipment of grain arrived in Rome. The Senate was planning to distribute it free of charge to the people, but during the vote on the matter, Coriolanus appeared and asked to speak. The grain distribution, he argued, would have a negative impact on the city. Many senators hesitated and the votes were divided. Coriolanus didn't stop there. He went on to criticize the very idea of democracy. He demanded the abolition of the participation of representatives of the people, the tribunes in government, and advocated for the city to be governed solely by patricians. When this, Coriolanus' final speech, became public knowledge, the citizens' indignation knew no bounds. Tribunes were sent to the Senate demanding that Coriolanus appear before the people. He refused. Unrest erupted throughout the city. The Senate, fearing an outbreak of popular anger, voted to distribute grain free of charge. The tribunes were recalled, but the people continued to demand that Coriolanus apologize. In that case, and on the condition that he keep his thoughts to himself, he would be allowed to return to the army. Coriolanus appeared before the people for the last time, who listened in complete silence. He began slowly and calmly, but gradually descended into insults again. His tone was defiant, his expressions harsh. As he spoke, the people's indignation grew. Eventually, the uproar was so loud that he was unable to continue. After deliberating, the tribunes sentenced Coriolanus to death and ordered the magistrates to immediately throw him off the cliff. The crowd greeted this decision with enthusiastic shouts. However, the patricians managed to intervene, and the sentence was commuted to exile for life. The people rejoiced at the news that Rome's great national hero would be driven from the city in disgrace. Such rejoicing had never been seen on the streets of Rome in honor of victory over an enemy. Oysters open their shells completely at the full moon. When a crab sees an oyster, it throws a pebble or seaweed inside, preventing the oyster from closing again and becoming the crab's prey. Such is the fate of those who open their mouths too much and thereby expose themselves to the mercy of their listeners. Leonardo da Vinci, 1452-1519. Interpretation. Before Coriolanus entered politics, his name inspired reverence. His military exploits testified to his extraordinary courage. While citizens knew little about him, many legends were associated with his name. However, as soon as he appeared before the Romans and spoke his mind, the grandeur and mystery vanished. He made noise and boasted like a common soldier. He slandered and insulted the people as if feeling insecure and trying to assert himself. Suddenly it became clear that he was not at all what he was thought to be. The discrepancy between legend and reality deeply disappointed those who adored their hero. The more Coriolanus spoke, the weaker he seemed. Someone who doesn't control his words has no self-control and is unworthy of respect. If Coriolanus had spoken less, people would have had no reason to resent him. They would never have known his true feelings. He would have retained his powerful aura, would undoubtedly have been elected consul, and would subsequently have been able to put his anti-democratic views into practice. But the human tongue is a beast that few can tame. Those who squander the treasures of words cannot increase their power. In 1944, during a difficult time for him, Michael Arlen's screenwriter arrived in New York. To distract himself from his misfortunes, he decided to go to the famous restaurant 21. In the lobby, he ran into Sam Goldwyn, who gave him some unnecessary advice to buy RAS horses. At the bar, Arlen ran into Louis B. Meyer, an old acquaintance, who asked him what his plans were for the future. "I just spoke to Sam Goldwyn," Arlen began. "How much did he offer you?" Meyer interrupted. "Not enough," the screenwriter replied evasively. "Would 15,000 for a 30-week suit you?" Meyer asked. This time, Arlen didn't hesitate. "Yes," was his answer. Clifton Fathom in the Brown Book of Anecdotes. Respect for the law. At the court of Louis XIV, aristocrats and ministers spent days and nights debating matters of state. They conferred, argued, made and dissolved alliances, argued again until the decisive moment arrived. Two of their number were chosen to present the views of the parties to Louis himself. Who would make the final decision? Once the two were chosen, the debates resumed. How to formulate the reports? What would impress Louis and what would he dislike? What time of day was best to address him, and which corner of the Palace of Versailles should be chosen for this? What expression should be on their faces? When everything was finally decided, the crucial moment arrived. The two chosen ones approached Louis. This in itself required subtlety and delicacy. And having captured his attention, they began to discuss their case in detail, citing various arguments. Louis listened silently, maintaining an enigmatic expression on his face. When both had finished speaking and were awaiting the king's response, he, turning to them both, replied, "I will think about it." With these words, he departed. Thereafter, neither the ministers nor the courtiers heard another word from the king about the matter that interested them. They simply saw the result when later, sometimes weeks later, the king made a decision and acted. He never bothered to re-examine the matter. Interpretation. Louis XIV was a man of few words. He famously said, "The state is me. If only you could see the king." His expression is inscrutable, his eyes reminiscent of a fox's. He never discusses affairs of state with anyone except his ministers in the council. When speaking to courtiers, he refers exclusively to their privileges or duties. Even his most humorous and frivolous utterances sound like the utterances of a prophet.